Hello, welcome back to... This is not Discovering SCP. That's right, my friend, it's Sunday, so this is Aetheral Space 3.5. It's been a little while since we last recorded.
Yeah, I was going to say the only reason you can call the exact day is because we've waited till quite the last minute because of busyness. But we're hoping to get a new backlog up after this.
We've still got a bit of a backlog in terms of actual chapters, it's just videos, so there's no risk of chapters not coming.
Right. And so it's been a while, but I believe what happened last time was we were following Dennis and his buddy, whose name I forgot, because Dennis is a much more memorable name. And they were trying to kidnap this person who they thought was a rich girl, but who actually turned out to be Muzazi's new companion. And then Muzazi came in, and they're like, "Now tell us where the bad man is." And then it ended, and I squealed because Muzazi came back.
Yeah, you fangirled.
I did, a little bit.
Right, well, you remember correctly, that is what happened.
Yes,
and also,
oh my God,
of course...
10 pages long.
Yeah. Well, shall we get
and
into
of course...
it?
Wait,
I
what
was
were you
say,
saying?
of course, back with Dragan and everyone, they were in that meeting with the security guy,
Oh, yeah, who was like, "We got a job for you. You gotta stop the citizen."
Yeah.
Skipper raised an eyebrow. "You want us to take out the citizen for you? That's that's a big ask there, champ. You sure that's fair for just some youthful indiscretion?" "I never said that," Deer said, fingers still calmly steepled. "All I ask is that you assist us in our investigation." Dragan furrowed his brow as he listened. This felt like the kind of conversation that came with catches, like landmines. Agree to something without really thinking about it, and you were screwed. "I'll ask you again," said Deer, when Skipper didn't reply. "What do you know of the man called the Citizen?" He's a local terrorist," chipped in Dragan, earning himself another irritated glance from Deer. "Apparently, he bombed a news office recently. I'm assuming he's done other stuff." "You assume correctly," Deer said, now addressing him. "He has indeed done other stuff. The recent assassination of Augusto Price was the doing of him and his cohorts." "That's awful," muttered Ruth, who, if Dragan remembered correctly, was currently a suspect in the assassination of an admiral herself. "Cohorts," said Skipper, picking the nails of his organic hand, not even looking at Deer. "So this is a group operation?" Something was trickling into Skipper's speech, Dragan noticed. Even though he clearly was trying to stuff it down with a nonchalant demeanor, there was a kind of military efficiency to the way he was collecting information and clarifying it. Had he been a soldier at some point? It would make sense, given his combat abilities. This further proves my theory that Skipper used to be a supremacy soldier of some renown, but he committed an atrocity and now has changed his tune. Deer nodded. "Hoodlums from the local systems, we think. They've joined the citizen after falling for his rhetoric, most likely." "His rhetoric," Skipper said. Skipper said the word as if tasting it, still not looking directly at Deer. "There's a political motivation to this whole thing, then, yeah? Rah, rah, fight the power and that kind of thing." The section commander waved a hand dismissively. "Pretty words to open up divisions between the classes here on Talden. The whining of sore losers, nothing more. He's nothing but an aggravator that needs to be neutralized." It was Dragon's turn to glare at Deer.
Fucking hell, Dragon. He makes his triumphant return.
"What are you having a problem, King?"
I feel like I can't even correct this when I notice it anymore, because it's like Dragon is.
There's a dragon, yeah. He's his own character. He comes in brief moments. Do you know what Dragon is? He's the audience insert.
Yeah,
that's when the audience gets to join the story. It was Dragon's turn to glare. Yeah, because think about it. I'm being honest, because only people who watch these videos see Dragon. Dragon never makes it in the published, except for maybe in rare cases when you publish.
But as soon as I find out, I go in and kill him.
Yeah, you're a Dragon Slayer. Oh my God, that's what you are when you edit. It was if you ever hire an editor for this series, you have to title the position Dragon Slayer. It's like, why? What does that mean? You'll find out, buddy. It was Dragon's turn to glare at Deer. He hadn't exactly been Mr. Rich back on Crestpool, and he didn't much like the implication that being unhappy that some people could... The implication that being unhappy... I'm a little confused. What's this saying? Much like the implication that being unhappy that some people could gorge themselves.
There's more to the sentence. It's not a full stop.
Oh, sorry. No, let me finish. The implication that being unhappy that some people could gorge themselves while you bordered on starvation made you a sore loser. Skipper caught a glance of Dragon's expression, then his eyes flicked back to Deer. "You ever been hungry, Baldy?" Again, Deer frowned at the use of what was rapidly becoming a nickname, but he answered all the same. Of course I have. Everyone has at some point. Oh, here comes the trope. That's not what I mean, chuckled Skipper. I mean really hungry. Hungry enough to eat anything, I mean. Hungry enough that your stomach is just made of pain. There's always a dialogue about that anytime like food shortage comes up. I love it. Of course not, said Deer. Didn't think so, said Skipper, his voice a condemnation. Ruth nodded gravely behind him. And with that, Skipper suddenly stood up from his chair with such force that the automatic furniture wobbled in the air behind him, almost flipping upside down. I don't care much for your motivations, or the way you talk about people, said Skipper, crossing his arms. I'm afraid me and mine will have to take our leave. Deer sighed. I see. In that case, we have no choice but to throw you all in prison and throw away the key. I think your cause is just, and I want to help, Skipper said, sitting back down. Jagan audibly My question is, if Skipper's truly such a badass, how are they so confident they can get him? I guess he does have all his friends, and Skipper would never let his friends get hurt for him. But, I feel like if he's such a badass that they need, shouldn't he be able to not be threatened by them?
It's still going to be a pain in the ass to be, wanted here as well.
Right. Dragon audibly groaned. He had no issue with Skipper getting himself into shit, but the rest of them was another story. How exactly do you want us to help? Dragon cut in again. If he could take control of the negotiations here, then maybe he could stop Skipper from getting them all thrown into prison. Deer leaned over the desk and tapped the screen of the script. The image changed from the bombed-out office to a photo of a young Umbrant man walking through a hallway, clearly taken by some kind of surveillance camera. Excuse me. The Umbrant had short brown hair and white pupils that rested in his black sclera. His face seemed like the kind that was perpetually nervous, as if he was constantly on the verge of being attacked. In one hand, he held a script. In the other, some kind of envelope. Who's that? Said Bruno, speaking up for the first time in a while. Dragon looked at him. He'd worked out that Bruno and Serena had worked in intelligence for a period of time, so was this kind of clandestine dealing bringing those old instincts back? This is Ambrin Roz, said Deer, a reporter for The Watch. The newspaper that has its office bombed by the Citizen. I assume that's Had, right?
That's right, yes.
We believe he has valuable information about the terrorist in question. And that's why they bombed the office? Said Dragon, to try and take him out. That's our working theory. It's not in the envelope, if that's what you're thinking. We found that thoroughly burnt in his apartment, along with the rest of his belongings. His apartment was bombed too? Said Bruno, still running his eyes over the photograph as he memorized Rouse's appearance. That's correct. We've managed to pass it off as one of the Blastland gang's doing for now, and the Citizen hasn't yet taken responsibility for it. Skipper seemed to have shut up for the moment, thank goodness. The sensible people, also known as Dragon and Bruno, could actually negotiate now. Not now, Skipper. Daddy's talking. Ruth, too, if she ever spoke up. Really, just anyone but Skipper, now that Dragon thought about it. Bruno looked up from the script to D.A. Die? Dear. Okay, I was confused for a second, actually.
What's up to D.O.?
Yada yada, Joseph. You want us to find this person? That's right. I don't know how that's any easier than catching the Citizen, Dragon said seriously. This city's damn big, and if he hiding from the Citizen already, I don't see how we're going to find him. Am I doing the voices right, by the way? It's been a hot minute.
Dragon's a little more aggressive than he usually was, I think.
Yeah. Deer smiled thinly, took the script back, and put it in one of his desk drawers. That's simple, he said. We already know where he'll be. The Nyan... how did we pronounce this before? I did it right the first time. The Nyan, tomorrow night.
Nyan.
He's already made contact with one... Nyan, tomorrow night. He's already made contact with one of our undercover officers in the smuggling guilds, seeking transport off-world. Sounds like you've got him already, said Skipper, leaning back in his seat. Good job, all. What do you need us for? Fitz. Tears smile faded, his expression turning grave. If we know he's going to be there, he said, so do they. And they'll be coming for him. That man? Oh, fuck. What was Muzazi's voice again? Help me out.
He was sort of a serious guy.
Oh, yeah, it was like monotone. Is he asleep? Said Muzazi, striding back into the alleyway. Marie Hazard glanced back at the large sack slung over her shoulder. That's one word for it, she shrugged. He's unconscious, at least. That will suffice, Muzazi nodded. Did he give up the location? She nodded down the alleyway at the barely noticeable door built into a metal plate on one wall. The only reason to hide such an entrance was fear of scrutiny. Yes, it was very likely that this place was Alden Petrio's lair. Let's go, he said, walking past her towards the entrance. Hazard is such a cool last name. Hazard raised an eyebrow as he passed her. That's it, she said, sounding half amused in that way she almost always did. No, thank you. Musashi paused. It was true. He had forgotten to thank her for her diligence. His manners had deteriorated ever since he'd arrived.
Maybe a little less robotic.
I know. I just wanted to see how it felt narrating Musashi's. It feels like Spock. He glanced down at his garb. Perhaps that was the reason why. It had pained Musashi to hide his identity while in the UAP. The truly strong should never fear to show their face. But Marie had managed to convince him that he would impair the mission otherwise. As such, he'd taken on this disguise. The appearance of a lout, clad in run-down, dusty clothes, with little hope of ever climbing out of the abyss called poverty. He'd thrown away his clean, dignified uniform in order to create this facade, but luminescence still hung there, strapped to his side. No matter what he did, where he went, he could not abandon Luminescence-chan. Forgive me, he said quietly, looking down at the blade. I didn't mean to be so rude. Oh my god!
It drops to one knee.
I think that's supposed to be wasn't, by the way. He really does treat his waifu like a sword. His sword like a waifu. Oh my god. It started as a joke, but it really does feel that way. I think you meant to write wasn't there, Tan. He wasn't quite sure how he felt about his new
you skipped
companion.
a bit there, so that's why I was confused.
Oh, my bad. When Musashi had expected reproachment for his disgraceful behavior, Marie only laughed and clapped a good-humored hand on his shoulder, with a splendid amount of force. He wasn't quite sure how he felt about his new companion. He'd originally been against traveling with a partner, but the Special Commission had been somewhat wary of allowing him to run free after what happened on Kalis Breck. He'd explained the circumstances behind his decisions there, but there was still an opinion that he was unpredictable. In that sense, Marie was here to watch him just as much as help him catch Hadrian. As for Marie herself, though, he found little reason for complaint. He'd never met such a master of Aether... Okay, so she does have Aether. For those who were wondering. He'd never met such a master of Aether cloaking, and during their travel here she demonstrated fine knowledge of weaponry and piloting. She seemed a splendid, multi-talented special officer. I'm only joking, a toy, she giggled, patting him on the back. Don't take it so seriously, okay? He nodded respectfully. I see. It was a joke. Thank you for indulging my foolishness. That only sent Marie into another wave of laughter. By the end of it, she had laid her bag down and was clutching her stomach with both hands. Musashi hoped his misunderstanding hadn't caused her too great a stomachache. Is it possible for someone to be this stupid? Musashi, come on.
He's too earnest.
You're so damn earnest, Marie said as her laughter trailed off, wiping a tear from her eye. She looked him up and down, a strange look in her eyes. Well, I don't dislike it, but be careful, okay? There are people who will take advantage of you if you're like that. A sudden, hot flare of anger ran through Musashi's body, and his grip tightened on Luminescence's hilt to such a degree that his knuckles turned white. He gritted his teeth, glaring into empty space as if it held his quarry. Yes, he growled. I'm aware of this. Dragon Hadrian. Bum, bum, bum! Dragon, why? How could you betray this boy?
He's too pure.
He was the reason Musashi had come here, the reason he had submitted himself to such disgrace. Many had told him that chasing Hadrian at this point was meaningless. Any secrets he had access to weren't worth wasting the time of a special officer to keep hidden. But still, it was the principle of the thing. To Itoi Musashi, the whole world relied on the principle of the thing. He didn't understand. Why had Dragon Hadrian betrayed him at the moment of his own rescue? Why had he turned the lie of his betrayal into truth? To be offered the Supremacy's open arms and slapped them aside. It was unimaginable, incomprehensible. It was as if Dragon Hadrian had decided to stop breathing. So this would be a really interesting turning point if we had established the Supremacy as more of a dystopia. But aside from Dragon personally living on a shithole planet, it seems like, I mean, you can argue that the Supremacy, based on the name and their goals, is a not great government. But it seems like they do, at least for their military, have pretty sweet living conditions. And the fact that people like Musashi are able to take out corruption on their own time, assuming they have that desire to do so, is pretty interesting to me. So I am curious. I, as an audience member who doesn't know much about the Supremacy yet, I, to an extent, kind of relate to Musashi's worldview. Like, I get he had bonded with his captors a bit, and that he didn't even realize he did it, but he did kind of give up everything for basically being a prisoner, which is very bizarre. I think that's part of why I like Musashi so much. Because he's not just a character that is ignorant to the true reason he was betrayed or something. We don't even know why the fuck Dragon was an idiot about it. I went on a side tangent there in the middle of the reading. He would find Dragon Hadrian, force the answers out of him, and correct whatever misunderstanding had led him so astray. Murray winced. Seems I hit a sore spot there. Sorry. He sighed deep, letting his anger leave him through his breath. His grip on his sword relaxed, and he let his hand fall to his side. He's way better at calming down than, what was his name, Samael?
Yeah, Samael just fucking lost his shit and then got madder and madder.
Yeah. His breathing returned to a calm and steady tempo. No, he shook his head. My apologies. I shouldn't have lost my temper like that. As Musashi walked past her toward the entrance, Marie rolled her eyes. I already told you to stop apologizing, she muttered, irritated. There was much to attend to, and yet things kept getting in the way. Alden Petrio looked up from his desk as he heard a loud bang from the entrance, and a moment later one of his underlings came half running, half limping into his complex, eyes wide with fear and stinking of anxiety. The complex had once been an air filtration center. Once the authorities had switched to using filter drones to keep the air clean, for lack of a better word, in the pit, the center had essentially just become free real estate. Due to its previous use, however, the layout of the headquarters was exceedingly simple. Essentially, it was a long, wide hallway with around 20 banks of computers on either side, workers tapping away on holographic keyboards, poring through every piece of surveillance that the Petrio operation had access to. Alden Petrio's desk was right at the end of the hallway, a massive hulk of metal bolted to the floor. Countless holographic screens and keyboards were arrayed around him, like a spider's web. Alden watched disinterestedly as his underling charged towards the desk, leaving a red trail behind him. The moment the underling came too close, his two bodyguards pointed their plasma pistols at him, and he skidded to a halt. He tripped over his clearly injured foot and collapsed to his knees, yelping in pain. What can I do for you? Alden said, looking the underling over with one eye as he kept reading through intelligence reports with the other, his pupils moving independently of one another. He often thought that he'd won the genetic lottery in some respects. His scurrant blood gave him the capacity to take in twice as much information, while his cogitant half let him process and utilize it. As someone born victorious, he didn't much like losing, not even in the smallest ways, not even by having an underling disrespect him and go unpunished. This is a very interesting story, because usually when you go into, like, you know, genetics and, like, superiority stuff, it's already sketchy territory, but the whole universe is based on gene tyrants who rewrote people's wills and special, like, genetic sub-races having special abilities, which is kind of interesting. And I wonder if there won't be some sort of MacGuffin or, like, important thing at some point that involves DNA or genetics in general as, like, a key point of the plot, which I find really interesting. Like, for example, cloning people with, like, genetic powers or, like, altering them. Sorry, I keep going off on tangents. I hope that's all right,
yeah,
Tan. Alden scanned the underling's face, cross-referencing it with his memory. Dennis Malkuth, 23. Single, but has flings with two girls on opposite sides of Brink District. Known associate of Grettenlands, another thug of little value. Lives in an apartment in Rapid District with two brothers named Carl and Riki. Spends the majority of his pay at a bar owned by his uncle called the Well Wagon, although on occasion he visits a smaller establishment belonging to a friend. Homeschooled by father, now deceased from lung failure. Recruited to my organization by Harmon Rowe, now deceased from gunshot wound. Cannot abide the taste of salad. Has a fetish for sunburnt skin. What the fuck? Who has a fetish for sunburnt skin?
Dennis does.
Is this Dennis?
Yeah.
Oh, Dennis Malkuth! I only knew him as Dennis, so I didn't realize.
Now you know
Alden
about
blinked.
him.
Yes, he knew a little about this man. Malkuth panted there on the floor for a second before looking up, eyes still deathly wide. Boss! He breathed. They're coming! Alden stroked his black goatee, continued looking down at the man with one eye. Who's coming? He said, still sounding somewhat disinterested. Full sentences, please. The thug opened his mouth to speak.
Maybe
again,
a little less
another...
smug. He's meant to be like a bit emotionless about it.
Sorry. It's hard because you write all the characters so freaking smug.
I'm sorry.
Alden stroked his black goatee, continued looking down at the man with one eye. Who's coming? He said, still sounding somewhat disinterested. Full sentences, please. The thug opened his mouth to speak again, but he was cut off by another bang from the entrance, followed by a pair of twin gunshots. Ah, I see, Alden said, smiling thinly. I'm under attack. Men, please prepare for battle. With those calm words, half the workers at the computer stood up from their screens, making sure to lock their screens in accordance with security procedures, and pulled heavy-duty plasma shotguns from underneath their desks, pointing them towards the entrance. I love that, because that's such a bizarre, like, dystopian thing to see in a movie. Like, everyone's at the computer, they just quietly log off and then stand up with, like, fucking laser cannons. Alden liked to make sure his staff were as multi-purpose as possible. If possible, take them alive, he called out a little louder. I'd like to know how these intruders found out about me. That was more than possible. He'd had those weapons crafted from parts that included a stun function. He'd have to perform interrogation on site, but that wasn't a problem. More than once, this complex had played host to torture sessions. They were unpleasant, but not intolerable. "You don't understand, boss," whimpered Malkuth pitifully from the floor. They ain't normal." Sighing in exasperation, Alden looked up with one eye to watch the entrance, his other continuing to look over the latest purchase records from the Don House's culinary staff. Excuse me. If these intruders were unusual, Alden would simply observe until he understood, and then they would no longer be unusual. Two figures strode into the room from around the corner. One was a man in scruffy clothing, though clearly unsuited to them, with dark hair and a pristine white sword in his hand. The other was a young woman wearing a leather jacket. Unlike the man, she has no visible weapon, only the fists balled at her sides. "Your guards are really rude," grinned the woman. "We sent Dennison as our ambassador."
Oh, ambassador.
Oh, like short for ambassador. Oh, okay. As our ambassador, but they shot at us anyway. "Fire," said Alden, droll, picking up a mint from his desk and popping it in his mouth. His workers opened fire, a blue storm of stun shots flying through the air and soaring towards the pair. To an ordinary person, these shots would likely be too fast and too numerous to properly perceive, but it was clear already that these two were not ordinary people. The man went to the left, flying slightly further than the force of his jump would allow, and landed on top of a desk, his foot slamming through a not inexpensive computer. His sword moved so fast it looked like a fluid whip, 2 swipes easily bisecting the shotguns of the nearest guards. The woman on the right simply kept charging forward to the guard nearest her. The guard calmly lifted his shotgun towards her and fired off stun shots. Once, twice, thrice, each blue bolt striking her with no visible effect save a momentary twitch. The swordsman leapt upwards, avoiding another round of stun shots before opening up his scruffy coat, the movement making it look as if he had wings for a moment. In that same instant, numerous tiny silver objects came shooting out from within his garment, flying forwards with incredible speed. Alden narrowed his eye, inspecting the projectiles more closely. They were small knives, each one with a thin white thruster flaring out of the back of their handle. They maneuvered through the air like miniature starships, lodging themselves in the guards' weapons and making them inoperable. In the next few seconds, the two intruders... Yeah. It also seems that Marie's deal is like she's super defensive. Like, you can't hurt her, she's too tough. In the next few seconds, the two intruders would begin actually killing his workers. Alden ran a few quick calculations in his head, confirming his prior assumption. It would cost more to replace these workers than it would to offer his resources to the intruders. "Surrender," he said calmly, his quiet voice cutting through the carnage as he raised a relaxed hand. Immediately, his guards threw their weapons and retreated back, closer to his desk. The thrusters on the flying knives died down, and they clattered to the floor as one. The swordsman sheathed his silver sword. The woman clicked her tongue, balled fists on her hips. "I was just getting into it," she said, annoyed. "But hey, you're a smart cookie for giving up, Mr. Petrio. Nice one." Alden watched the intruders with one eye each as he spoke. Well, he's like cross-eyed when he does it. Or I guess the other way around, his eyes are on like the opposite sides. "What can I do for you?" he said, voice droll. "This interruption is inconvenient." The swordsman, clearly the leader of this operation, stepped forward towards Alden's desk. His guards looked as if they were going to try to repel him, but Alden shook his head. There was little they could do against this man at any rate. As the man approached, Alden observed closely. His efficient stride, the resolute expression in his eyes, his combat skills, the fact that he wore a disguise, the fact that he had the pre-existing connections to know about this place. For someone of Alden's caliber, the inevitable conclusion was easy to reach. "You're a special officer of the Supremacy, I take it?" he said, swallowing his mint. The special officer faltered in his step for a moment, narrowed his eyes. He hadn't been expecting his identity to be revealed. The woman, on the other hand, didn't look surprised in the least. She had a better understanding of the way this world functioned. "That's right," the officer said finally. "And you are Alden Petrio?" Alden nodded. "Yes." "The information broker Alden Petrio, who has a backdoor into the Talden government surveillance records?" "That's right." The special officer reached his desk and looked down at Alden with cold gray eyes. Alden vaguely wondered if this interaction would end with his death. That would be unfortunate, if so. He had clients to meet with later that day, and those appointments would have to be rescheduled while his replacement was decided upon. "The Alden Petrio who can uncover any secret?" the special officer said quietly. Alden nodded. The special officer put a hand in his pocket, earning a series of flinches from Alden's guards, and pulled out a script. He slammed it down onto the table with barely restrained anger, and from the intensity of his gaze, Alden knew it was for him to look at. "I need you to find someone," the officer said. Alden looked at the image on the screen. It was a young man with shoulder-length silver hair and blazing blue eyes, a fellow cogitant without a doubt, and from the background it looked like this was an image taken for some kind of official identification. "A name would be useful," he said, already committing the face to memory. The swordsman spoke through gritted teeth. Dragon Hadrian. Dun dun dun.
Musashi making moves.
So Musazi's priority is no longer justice, at least at the moment. And I wouldn't say it's revenge either, because he even stated he wants to correct Dragon. His motivation is this mystery about Dragon and what's going on, and he's temporarily putting justice and stopping criminals to the side for now, which is interesting, because we haven't seen that with him before. He usually was pretty black and white cookie cutter about his morality. So it's very curious that he's so invested in Dragon. And I wonder if perhaps at some point Musashi will become a hero later. I hope so. I mean, he kind of is the hero technically so far. We haven't really seen the group do anything. Yeah, we haven't really seen our group of criminals do anything super heroic yet. This might be the first time in this arc if they stop the Citizen or whatever. But it kind of sounds like the Citizen's not a bad guy per se. I don't know. There's a lot going on. It's very interesting.
Nice.
Very, yeah. What did you think about it? I mean, I know you wrote it, but hearing it back.
I like it, yeah.
Very expertly put analysis. Alright, let me think of a question for this week. Or this episode, rather, sorry. I think... This is a bit vague, because I don't know if enough has been revealed about the universe for anyone to make a meaningful decision. And granted, everyone always thinks they'll choose the good actions anyways, but still, I'll ask for curiosity's sake. If you were a special officer and you had, like, that kind of power and freedom, what would you focus on in a galaxy full of all kinds of things? What problems would you address first? Or would you abuse your power for evil? Or would you just take the fact that your job's so vague and lay in the lap of luxury?
That's a good one.
Yeah. Alright. Anything else from you, Tan, before we close it off here?
Nothing I can think of, no. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Alright. Yeah, if you watch this, you are based. And if you like it, you should go on Royal Road and leave a review. But you didn't hear that from me.
PodChamp.
Yeah, you should.
What? Can you say in the Skipper voice, leave a review on Royal Road?
Please, if you're a good person, you'll leave a review on Royal Road. It wouldn't take that much effort, now would it?
It's like a Tsunami advert.
You're watching Bleach.
Coming up next on Family Guy.
Hey, Bader.
Okay, so the episode's done.
10-hour video of Skipper guilt-tripping you into leaving a review on Royal Road. Alright, bye!
Bye!